I'm Dr. Orion Taraban, and this is PsycHack's Better Living Through Psychology. And the topic of today's short talk is the appreciation gap. The appreciation gap is responsible for the deterioration of millions of relationships every year. It's something that I am certain you have personally experienced, and today I'm going to teach you how to recognize it more readily in your relationships and to take action to counteract its effects. Be sure to watch to the end where I'll give a counterintuitive suggestion on how women can reduce the likelihood that their men will cheat on them. Very simply, the appreciation gap is the space between the amount of respect, gratitude, and acknowledgement people receive from their partners and the amount of respect, gratitude, and acknowledgement people feel justifiably due from their partners. This gap becomes a problem when people feel that they deserve more appreciation than they get, which I call a negative gap. Now, let's begin by acknowledging that a negative appreciation gap just might be a default setting of human nature. Like nearly everyone believes that they are more important and irreplaceable than they truly are. Almost everyone believes that their efforts and contributions and sacrifices should be acknowledged more than people do. I've heard very few people confess that they receive more recognition than they deserve. And when I have, it was usually a case of false modesty. In any case, it seems that most people, whether they are actively protesting it or not, believe that they are not getting the appreciation they deserve at work, at home, and in their intimate relationships. So, what's to be done about this? Well, there are actually some fairly simple solutions to this problem that parties on both sides of the gap can enact to mitigate its corrosive influence. But rather than keep it abstract, let's discuss potential strategies through the lens of a concrete example. This is one that I hear all the time in my consultation practice in the context of intimate relationships: sexual exclusivity. While some men might be naturally monogamous, it's pretty clear that sexual exclusivity does not come easily for the vast majority of men. Now, a lot of men don't have good optionality anyway, so their exclusivity is a moot point, but some men do. And when men surrender their optionality for one specific woman, and they continually resist the temptation or the enticement of other women, men often feel like they've done something rather significant. Like a warrior, they have protected their commitment through a great inner battle. It can be effortful and difficult to forego desirable opportunities for the sake of their commitment. And men are often keenly aware of the sacrifices their victories entail. On the other hand, from the woman's perspective, when a man is sexually exclusive, he's just doing what he's supposed to be doing as a boyfriend or as a husband. Why should he get a gold star for being monogamous? Like, that's the bare minimum in a monogamous relationship, isn't it? And in any case, it's what he signed up for, so he made his bed. I mean, I've been exclusive, and it's not that hard, and you don't see me demanding appreciation. Do all men act this way? How did I end up with this lunatic that thinks he deserves to get paid for resisting the urge to burn down the company? Now, as is often the case in relationship disagreements, both perspectives contain some truth. It's not like the man is entirely right and the woman is entirely wrong or vice versa. However, neither party is behaving effectively here. Persisting in these perspectives is probably going to drive our two lovebirds further and further apart. So, what's to be done? First, let's discuss the problem from the point of view of the person experiencing the negative appreciation gap, which in this example is the man who felt as though his efforts to stay monogamous were being taken for granted. The man got himself into this position because he wasn't honest with himself or because he lacked the courage to be honest with the woman in question. If you followed my work for a while, you know that I'm not big on compromise. I don't like it. However, I do respect sacrifice. Sometimes it's in our best interests to make a voluntary sacrifice of certain attachments for our own good. And the respectable thing about sacrifice is that it's not quid pro quo. That is, It doesn't entitle you to someone else's sacrifice further down the road. A sacrifice is not interpersonal, and it comes with no strings attached. This means that people, men and women, should really pause on the brink of making a sacrifice and ask themselves a very specific question. And that question is, if I don't receive any respect, gratitude, or acknowledgement from anybody as a consequence of this sacrifice, which is a definite possibility, do I still want to do it? That's the question. And people need to be real honest with themselves in this moment. Now, some things are still worth doing, even if you don't receive any appreciation or recognition in return. There are hills that are worth dying on. But let's be real, people. Most hills are not worth dying on. Most hills are just mounds of mud. In a lot of cases, it's a better idea to tactically retreat and live to fight another day. The problem arises when people don't know their geography and they confuse the one hill for the other. Don't pretend that you're making a sacrifice when you aren't. And you know you're pretending when you feel resentful, bitter, or envious when your sacrifice goes unacknowledged. If, for whatever reason, you feel like you couldn't honestly forego acknowledgement and recognition for your sacrifice, then don't do it. Don't do it. This is because respect and appreciation are outside your domain of control. It's up to other people whether or not they acknowledge you, not you. And most people are not going to be able to recognize your sacrifice as such. As I said before, recognition is a very high thing. People generally need to be close to mastery themselves or to have passed through a very similar experience to be able to even see the sacrifice in question. And most people are not going to fit into either one of those categories. They're not masterful in the same way you are, and they haven't had the same experience as you have. Chances are good that any sacrifice you make will go unappreciated. And that's kinda as it should be, because virtue has to be its own reward. If you appreciate the insights on this channel, I would highly encourage you to get your hands on a copy of my book, The Value of Others. Over the course of 432 pages, I delve deep into my economic model of relationships and explain the behavior of both men and women in the game of mating and dating. I also provide a lot of actionable advice on how to get and keep more of what you want in the sexual marketplace. Once you read The Value of Others, you'll never look at relationships the same way again. Now available in ebook, audiobook, and paperback formats. The links are in the description. So, be real with yourself. If you want recognition or appreciation or respect for your good works, you're not a monster, you're a person. These are emotional needs that we have as human beings, and pretending that we're entirely liberated from these needs is kind of like believing in your own omnipotence. That is, that you're so self-sufficient that other people aren't necessary. In this particular case, the man could have avoided this problem if he were more honest with himself. If, in his heart of hearts, a man doesn't want to make a sexual exclusive commitment to a woman, then he shouldn't make one. In general, he does so because he is trying to make his woman happy or to get her to not leave. However, loyalty doesn't make women happy. I'll say that again. Loyalty doesn't make women happy. It doesn't. Trust me, there are plenty of unhappy women in the world whose husbands are loyal to them. Miserable women don't remember that their husbands aren't sleeping with other women, which, again, is what they were supposed to be doing anyway, and think, well, thank my lucky stars. Awareness of that fact has turned my frown right upside down. In general, people are as happy as they choose to be. And most unhappy people are unhappy, at least in part, because they have a habitual tendency to discount and minimize the things in their life that they do have going on for them. Your loyalty will not be an exception here. Okay, now let's consider things from the other perspective, which in my hypothetical example is that of the woman who believes that monogamy is simply a given. She also isn't behaving effectively here. In general, it's a good idea to err on the side of being too emotionally generous with your partner. You're much safer assuming that their actions reflect effort and intention, even when they don't, than you are assuming that their actions are effortless and unintentional, when in fact they aren't. It costs absolutely nothing to recognize your partner's efforts, and this recognition, when it is based on accurate description, is immensely rewarding. It's the basis of respect. Women with loyal partners could periodically recognize that fact. They don't have to give a man a cookie, but it would be better if they did. Let's talk about this, ladies. Women, from the perspective of most men, there is no reward for being loyal in a sexual relationship. But there is an enormous penalty for stepping out. And don't quibble with me here. Things like not losing a woman or preventing divorce are not rewards. Those are punishments disguised as rewards. And any situation in which there is no reward for indefinite perfection and severe punishment for the first infraction is a real shitty contingency schedule. Ladies, imagine a job where no matter how good you were, no matter how hard you worked, no matter what sacrifices you made, you never got a bonus, let alone recognized for your efforts. Like, how would that make you feel? What would be your incentive to continue to make an effort? By the same token, imagine that any deviation from your perfect track record could invalidate decades of good performance and lead to significant and immediate financial consequences. How do you think that would affect your emotional well-being? Finally, if you ever brought the situation to your boss's attention and he replied, "Well, why would you be entitled to more than your negotiated compensation simply for doing the job you were hired to perform?" How do you think that would change your perception of the company? And yet, this is how so many women act when they take their male partner's sexual exclusivity for granted. In this contingency schedule, there is no carrot. There are only sticks, which could very well be part of the reason why marriage tends to beat the spirit out of men. It is a relationship that is fundamentally executed through the threat of punishment as opposed to the hope of reward. And this is a stupid strategy because even when they win, women lose. Because what do they win? A man who is there because he fears to leave, not because he authentically wants to be there. Though women might still choose to enact the strategy because it's easier to make a man occasionally afraid than it is to make him consistently desirous. In any case, smart women use carrots to motivate behavior in their partners as well. They not only acknowledge and appreciate and respect their men's sacrifices in the service of their sexual exclusivity, they go a step further. Women, you hate when men cheat on you, but what reward do you offer for being loyal? To you, that's just doing your job, which invalidates the man's efforts. So here's my crazy idea of how women can reduce the likelihood that men will cheat on them. Gamify the process. Give him some carrots. Give him something he could look forward to as a consequence of the good action you would like him to perform. Men are mostly rational. If they understand that they will get more out of being loyal than they would by not being loyal, they are much more likely to honor their commitments. And women are largely in control of those contingencies. Now, obviously, women are going to have different comfort levels with respect to the enticements they will be willing to offer in exchange for continued loyalty. But offering some enticement is a no-brainer. And the creamier the enticement, the more effective it's likely to be. In general, it's a good idea to reward the behaviors in your partner that you want to see more of. And this is no exception. So there you have it. The appreciation gap in a nutshell. Don't make sacrifices unless you're honestly willing to forego acknowledgement and recognition. You're a human being with emotional needs, and you can choose which hills to die on. And don't exclusively rely on punishments to influence your partner's behavior. Give them carrots to chase and reward the behavior that you want to see. What do you think? Does this fit with your own experience? Let me know in the comments below. And please send this episode to someone who you think might benefit from this message. I know you know somebody. You're thinking about that person right now who needs to hear this. Send it to that person, because it's word of mouth referrals like this that really help to make the channel grow. You want more of this content? Great. I have a lot of options for you. Join my free weekly newsletter. I put out original content there every week. Book a one-on-one paid consultation with me. You can do both of those on my website. There's also my book, The Value of Others, which goes into relationships in exhaustive detail, and my member community, The Captain's Quarters, where I do bi-monthly live group consultations and Q&As with invited guests. Links to everything are in the description below. Check them out. As always, I appreciate your support, and thank you for listening.